Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I am back in the studio in the real Java Cafe off the road. And we are here with our mayor today for We Need to Know Wednesdays with Woo. It is her last appearance for this year, for 2022. And we did a little recap when she was with us for marking and celebrating her technical year anniversary. But we're going to check in with her about 2022, what she's envisioning for Boston in 2023. We're also going to get an update about violence, mass and cast, and yes, the number one, unsolicited in replies. I'm actually on Twitter watching right now for the trolls. About mask mandates and you know what's going to happen after BPS. And you know, I will say this, and as our current governor is getting ready to leave, say what you want to about our leaders, we have to appreciate the fact that our governor, Mayor Marty Walsh, Mayor Kim Janey, and continuing Mayor Michelle Wu has kept us pretty safe during this pandemic, and it is imperative that they continue, and also Maura Healey continue to do so. So anyway, I'm going to bring in our mayor to chat with her. We had another idea of last Wednesday, because she usually appears on the fourth Wednesday, but the past couple of months it's been the third. And I'm like, if we can get her in on the 3rd of December, the idea was to have her play the piano, and yours truly was going to try to sing a little bit. But let's bring her in and welcome back to the Java Cafe someone who is no straight. You're in the office today.
I am.
So we got you fully no T-Pain with the signal and whatnot. How are you, Mayor? How are you doing?
I'm good. I had a really great holiday with the family. We got to just unplug for a teeny tiny bit and just to watch the kids be so delighted and so sugared up and just, I don't know. There's always time. I know we missed our kind of caroling window for this year, but we could do New Year singing at the piano. Anytime you want to come in, we could do that.
Okay, we'll have to figure that. That will probably get the most views ever. That will be better than Shagun when we broke the internet about a year ago. But I want to definitely check in with you, and as we always do, see how you're doing. I also wanted to give you space for a couple of seconds. I know there's been a lot going on, a couple of fires, a lot of things. And when you said that, you know, you took some downtime, anybody that knows this office and you, there's really no such thing. I actually asked one of your chiefs yesterday. I said, do you really, like, in your position, can you really totally sign off? And they were like, yeah, we have coverage, and that's something you believe in. So one, wanted to check in on you, and two, in that, if you just wanted to address anything in reference to what, you know, generally the community is dealing with fires, violence, first time, you know, holidays, being without loved ones, and then we'll jump in.
No, it's the absolute most horrible time of the year for tragedy to strike. And we saw not only a two-alarm fire that displaced a number of families, but a fatality from that fire, which in Boston, in some ways, we take for granted the professionalism of the first responder services, forces that we have here, and the intense support from the medical community that goes into saving lives just day after day after day. I think our numbers that we tout a lot about how low some of our fatality rates are or public safety statistics. Obviously, I always try to make sure to state from the outset that you can't judge trauma by annual numbers because it is cumulative for residents. And even when you are living on this street, when you are experiencing that in your family, you can't measure that. That being said, when you zoom out, our numbers are very much affected by how many lives are saved because of the amazing and incomparable healthcare
Medical
system
yeah.
that is here too. So we had that activated over this last weekend, and we had our ONS and neighborhood services teams out, community engagement out, first responders, fire, police, with dozens of families who were displaced right during the Christmas holiday.
I wanted to just give space for that because I've noticed, and a little good friend of yours that I shared the picture with you on Christmas. One of the recent fires yesterday, the one in Dorchester, was literally right across the street from the Mathis's house. And so it just really stood out to me, one, that we're thankful that, nothing happened, but also holding space for those that are dealing with fires and loss and things like that. Tell us how you're doing. It's the holidays. This is, last Christmas you were in, but probably still in a little bit of a honeymoon period. And it was good to hear you say that you took time away with your family. And I have to keep reiterating this. You are a mom mayor, a married woman. And so there is a different level of grace I think folks need to give when it comes to prioritizing family. And you're a caregiver for your mom still, correct?
Yeah. And I've been
How are
sitting
you
with
doing?
that because there's been there's been headlines recently about I'm not spending enough time with the business community or this community or that community. And I know people feel it. I hear it at different levels. And I truly, it's something that I am kind of forcing myself to do in a way, because as a city councilor, especially at large, you have a teeny tiny team that just gives their all, right? People like Brianna and Dave and so many over the years. And you're used to just going until you're ragged, trying to be at every community meeting, because that is the function of being a legislator, is to understand the issues, surface them, give a platform for community. And then shifting over to now being charged with the responsibility of leading the implementation across 19,000 city employees, I have felt like my primary job over this last year was to really get to know the organization in a very intentional way. And I still haven't got around to every single department. I've now been at every police district, firehouse, community center, library. But there, haven't gotten to the canine unit, haven't gotten to our emergency management team. And it's just the breadth of what happens through city government. I think people sometimes don't realize, and it should be that way, because you should just experience it as a kind of seamless, invisible thing that you take for granted because it's so responsive, and that's what we aim for. But it is every action that city government kind of delivers is hundreds of hands that have been involved in some way along the process of planning it, implementing it, communicating it, making sure we're tracking it. And I have wanted to spend some time understanding how people are doing their jobs. And the reality is that for all that I get to have very public check-ins with you about how I'm doing and how I'm achieving that balance, there are tens of thousands of city workers, 19,000 city workers who don't get checked in with publicly and asked how they're doing when there's so much need in the community, and they're asked to do more and more and more with staffing levels that need to be shored up, and the pandemic that had caused us to really kind of go on this survival mode for city workers. And so I really want to take the time to make sure people are in buildings that aren't falling down and that are healthy, that they're getting space and infrastructure for mental health, and to have some of the, to question some of how we do what we do so that we can continue doing it and it can be sustainable. And that's meant that I haven't gotten to spend as much time at neighborhood association meetings as I've liked, or in, meetings with the business community. But the good news is that I have this amazing team, and they are more than more capable than me of understanding how to put together all the pieces across the city. But some of my goal for year 2, moving into 2023, is really going to be, now that we've kind of understood internally what to do,
Yeah.
building that same depth of partnership in community.
I thank you for naming it, because sometimes I get critique for being overly favorable and blah blah blah, but the reality is we spent time on the 5th floor together, and knowing the inner workings not only of the hall but any CEO of any organization, let alone being a municipality, there is a sense of a learning curve. Yes, you were an at-large counselor and whatnot, but I think we've talked a lot about giving the grace to the fact of coming together. You've been very honest about getting your footing with you and your team in the first year. Let me just say, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago, my good friend and brother, when it comes to the business community, you have chiefs and representatives of your administration for a reason. And God knows there's been a lot going on in the business community. So, Mayor, I want to jump in and ask a couple of things. And I guess I'll stay in the vein of mental health. You talked about staffing and violence and whatnot. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time. Is there was an abrupt notification. My understanding is, and we joke about me being media and or not, but there was a leak of a transition. Our, a young man that I have not always agreed with, but here lately have had gained a different level of respect. They leaked that Dr. Rufus Falk was going to leave, and he's being replaced by the good brother Isaac Yablo. There was, and we, had some correspondence about it. There was mixed feelings from those that have been in the field, SOAR, and I don't know at what level you can update about that because of what's going on with the union. But can you just give us a little brief update about where things are with violence and addressing violence? Because name the numbers thing, but the cumulative, exponential, compounded trauma that folks are dealing with, whether the numbers are low or not, this is a concern for folks.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, there's been no one like Dr. Falk, who's been just immersed in community for several years now. And at a time when, I mean, doing this work during the pandemic without resources and have just the resourcefulness on top of being in community and being so connected to community, he's my hero. And I've been so grateful for the work that he's been doing over this last year in our administration, really helping our goal has been not just to do the work and do it well, but find ways to question and do it with intentionality so that it happens sustainably for the workers who are actually part of that and community. And I think a lot of the ways in which this work had been done through the city was not sustainable. And we started to see that in how SOAR was nurtured or not, or lack thereof, and how trauma response happened either right on scene, but then maybe not so much with the follow-up. And so there were lots of pieces where sometimes this department was doing this thing and another one was doing that thing, and they just kind of were in a habit but not formally working together or coordinated. And then when one of them dropped off because it wasn't like the policy, then everyone was like, what happened? So Rufus has done a lot leading the charge over this last year of really thinking about what coordination actually looks like.
Yes.
So that public safety isn't just, do we show up when an incident happens and are there the right people in some places, but how are we year round wrapping around this concept of public safety and public health and housing and food security and education?
Root causes.
Exactly. Getting to the sustainability of how do we move past generational cycles. And so the word did get out from media inquiries sooner than I think anyone had planned for. And we thought it was really important to make sure that public communication included not only kind of an understanding of how Rufus has reshaped the entire way that this job functions and how we piece everything together, but also what the transition plan would look like, and that there was a transition plan in place, because I think some of what I really felt and heard from the community around how the SOAR news happened in that transition felt very sudden and uncertain, and it, I think, compounded trauma a little bit more because it was just the way that that some of the SOAR workers had not even had a direct conversation with the administration at the top levels before the media had the story. And so I've been trying to be really sensitive about how that communication piece happens, and sometimes that means things happen a lot faster than maybe they have meant to happen.
I thank you for that update, because it was something, you know, again, this is an area that, you know, once I get this thing that we've talked about to you, I'll say this is an area that will always be special to me. But, you know, moving on to some other stuff, and we'll talk about that later. Mayor, one of the other things that you talked about was housing and sustainability and root causes leading to violence. That leads me to also ask about another, you know, issue that you're often asked about and is a challenge, not just for your administration, but mass and cast. You know, it's winter time, even though, and we haven't talked about climate change, even though, you know, we're about to get these next 50-degree weather days in Boston in December and January. Maybe we'll talk about that next month. What's going on with mass and cast in the winter, and getting to sustainable, sort of decentralized, if you will, treatment, and a real concrete plan, if you will?
Yeah. So they've been doing amazing work. The numbers are down.
On people on mass and cast who are on there?
Who are there. And again, some of this is seasonal.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, there are, okay, actually, let me back up a step and say, this year actually is quite stressful for our shelter system and those advocates who work within emergency shelter, because we're seeing a compounding of a bunch of things happening at the same time. And obviously the pandemic led to a lot of housing challenges, and we're kind of right back to still having those challenges on families, while housing prices have basically gone back up, in a really tough economy where every time you go to the grocery store, things are more expensive and more expensive. And so a lot of people are being pushed into an emergency housing situation because they're being displaced by the housing market. At the same time, we have more and more migrant families coming in, just dozens of families every couple of weeks. And we don't sometimes get the same headlines that other cities are, because, you know, we had one plane come to Martha's Vineyard, and there are other, you know, these people, I wouldn't even call them leaders, in other states, making a big show of busing people to New York or Chicago, or, you know, targeting this or that Democrat city. We have not had as much show directed at us, but the numbers are still coming, because sometimes when people get bused to places like New York, they're still finding their way to family and connections and community in cities like Boston. And so it's been a tremendous strain. Our housing chief, Sheila Dillon, says this year has been the tightest that she has ever seen when it comes to the cushion that's available in emergency shelter. Now, we have some of the most professional providers and systems anywhere, so they're going to make it work. They know how to squeeze it so that they can go way above capacity by turning conference rooms, if needed, into shelter or this or that for those coldest nights. But we have a lot of work to do in terms of working as a state to address the housing issues that the kind of immigration system, plus the opioid crisis, plus our housing crisis in general, are all happening at the same time. I will say that one big piece of positive news is that we are seeing a lot more shelters now kind of changing how they have their approach and systems to be more low threshold as well. The reason why we had a mass and cast develop across the street from empty shelter beds inside was because those shelter systems weren't working for people who were actively living with substance use, right? Because of the requirements, because of this and that, because everyone's in one common space and they couldn't trust that their property would be safe. And now there's been much more of a move, even in shelters, to have individual spaces with lockers that people can keep their belongings, with more accommodation for active substance use and treatment. And so we're all shifting, not just the city, and that's been really great to see that it's making a difference. We now just need the state to be a full partner in that.
What is I'll move away from both of these, Mayor, and I've heard this from providers, I've heard this from activists, that these are two issues that people feel that I've heard people say that I love, trust, have been mentors. They're not going to be solved. And it's just so disheartening to hear. You gave a good underline around the housing issue of this, but then, there's treatment. Then there's, reconciliation with family members. There's the mental wellness and all of that. And so what is your response? And I just really thought of this in real time in listening. What is your response to that notion that both of these issues, should we always aim for zero homicides, and should we always aim for zero people being on mass and cast? What is your response to the notion that that won't happen?
I really believe that we know what to do, and we just need the coordination to do it. So here's another way to put it. We have 200 some low threshold supportive housing units that have been created in Boston. These did not exist a year ago, and or a year and a month ago. Of the 400 people who have gone through this at one point or another, their outcomes have been unbelievable. I mean, this is stories of each and every one of them could be turned into a movie of just, against all odds, finding ways to get stabilized, get on treatment, get a job, be able to pay rent, move into a permanent home. We have, over just 1 year, had 80 people be able to go totally from living on the street with serious challenges in their lives and mental health and substance use, to being stabilized, holding down an apartment, holding down a job, paying rent, with, of course, with supports along the way. It is transformational. I mean, those odds in just a short period of time, I don't know that any of us could overcome such challenges all at once, all at the same time. But that housing is the key to be able to, the housing wrapped around with supports is the key to make that possible for people. We need to see, Boston can only handle so much, and we are doing everything we can. This is really people coming from all around the state, the region, beyond New England even. And so if we could get a commitment for the state to put 1,000 units of this kind of housing that Boston's already put up 200 within the city, if we had 1,000 around the state, I believe that our teams have done all the numbers. That would be enough to not only be able to get people off of our wait list and into spots, but handle a cushion for new people who are coming in as well. We have 150 people on our wait list right now who need this kind of housing. And we need to set up, we've kind of actually seen it with the migrant family situation, where cities play a triage role. They take people, they kind of manage the intake, take care of people for a couple days, manage the emergency kind of food, shelter for a couple nights, and then the state takes over, and there's a system set up where people go, whether that's at one of the Fort Devens and the base that's been transformed, or other locations. We stood that up. The state put that together in just a couple weeks. We're choosing not to do the same thing for mass and cast right now as a state, and so we're all eager and excited and ready to work with the state on that next step. We know what would solve the situation, and we just need everyone to kind of get on the same page. It cannot be just the cities that raise their hand. The state will respond and say, okay, now I'll partner with you. There really needs to be more of a top-down, let's accept that this is a statewide challenge, not just Boston's challenge, and each city has some role to play in that.
Mayor, we've been saying that for months and years, and it's just, the low key journalist in me wants to ask, the state has pushed back a little bit on some of your response that they gave. I not verbatim, but we gave her the money for that $200,000.
It's not about money, right? But, of course that makes a difference. It's about people. If they would help us with our wait list of 150 people, we're not asking necessarily for more funding to do more in Boston. We want money to go outside Boston for those municipalities where people are experiencing these same challenges.
Mayor, thank you. There's a little different cadence coming from you and the eyebrow
I've
going
had
up.
this conversation 20 times.
And we're not, listen, please understand for the trolls that might try to clip something, we're not laughing at making light of the situation. Right. It's a little frustrating in the fact that, like, geez, and many of the activists and community folks have been saying this as well from the administration, which is probably, you know, you listen and informed. All right, I'll move us away because I'm getting to know, I was getting ready to ask what your drop Ted. Oh, okay. I didn't get a notice that you got to go. So good. So thank you for that, Mayor. And just, you know, generally you would say on the notion of not aiming to zero in both areas is something that you don't believe.
We don't have a choice. These are, I don't know. I think what's happened over the last couple decades, I would say, is that as people have grown apart from each other, and this is, I won't get into my whole nerdy soapbox about all the ways that we measure trust or isolation or, you know, our, like 40 years ago, so let's say our grandparents' generation, maybe a little bit of our parents' generation, they were hanging out with their neighbors 3 times a week. Everybody knew everybody's business. Everybody cared about it. You know, it was one big mix.
Business thing still goes on, Mayor. That everybody know. Sorry, go ahead.
It's all over social media now. And nowadays we are, you know, a lot of people barely have time to learn the names of their neighbors, much less feel that what happens to my fellow human being in the same city in a different neighborhood matters to me. But we are all invested in the homicide rate in Boston. We are all invested in what happens at Mass and Cass. It affects every single one of us and our kids and the school system and the opportunities in the city. And so we all have a selfish interest in addressing these challenges. And I hope to keep kind of supporting how that message of how connected we all are to each other.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And I loved how you mentioned go off in the nerdy thing and even in the housing thing for those that may try to say, oh, it's a spin. If you know our mayor, you ask her about one thing and the intersectionality in her brain, things just start going off and she'll get in one place. And so just some context of that. Mayor, the other thing I wanted to check in with you about is we talked about SOAR. One of the major things, and we'll go to this, and then I want to end on a good and sort of lighter note, is that there's been a lot of chatter, and thank God I'm watching on Twitter, and the trolls didn't come on today. But you know, there you look at data, you talk to Dr. Basola over at the Health Commission, and there is this pondering and wondering and ambiguity about will you mandate mask in BPS post the vacation. Don't know if you made a decision yet. Where are we with that? Yeah, and if you can talk a little bit about your process and as to why.
Yeah, so this is really a question that the Superintendent Skipper and Dr. Ojikutu and our educators and school nurses and everyone have been part of thinking through. And there will be, I think, a decision made soon, but not exactly yet. Here's the factors that go into the decision. One, you know, some people have asked, well, why would you ever think about just kids and not, say, other types of city buildings or workplaces in general and not adults? Our top priority here is keeping schools open, which means they have to be staffed and safe. This time last year, we had the biggest spike all year in terms of COVID cases. And that meant that it was more than 1,000 teachers every day across our system, which is not that many. It's something like 10,000 educators. More than 1,000, more than 10% of our workforce was absent every day for a period of a couple weeks because of a COVID spike. And that meant that you remember back then, it was Superintendent Caselius was dusting off her
to school
into a classroom to teach administrators because it was down so much. We don't have as high COVID levels this year, but we are seeing this tridemic of COVID plus flu plus RSV.
Yep.
I don't know a single person who has kids who's had their kids in school every single day for the last couple of weeks before, you know, I think my kids were both in school at the same time for like 2 days of the last 2 weeks before break. There's been a lot of stuff passed around, and we hear it from every single school building. We also know that because COVID numbers have been lower, people have been having more gatherings. People have been willing to travel more, to be in larger settings with other people and their family and friends, as they should for the holidays. And we have tests that went home with every child, so we hope that people will test, and that'll be part of it. But we want to head off, preempt what we saw this time last year, which was a huge spike right after the holidays. And so that is what the kind of thinking that would go into that kind of decision, which is that our priority is making sure that our schools can stay open. And this time last year, we came pretty close to not being able to do that.
I thank you for that update. And I saw things on, and I'm big on community input on everything. The community has to have input on anything. And I saw a notion where somebody asserted that she's going to trust the science without community input. What in Jesus? I don't understand. 2 years later in 2022, getting ready to hit 2023, we understand that it was here November, December of 19. 3 years we're in, and folks are still, I'm sorry, just a little response to some of the trauma I saw from social media yesterday when I said that you were coming on. Mayor, let's sort of end on a lighter note. Your thoughts on 2022, just in general, not just as mayor, a world view, a mom view. What are your thoughts on 2022? Like, we're getting ready to leave. What are your thoughts?
I think it's been a year with the start of healing, a year where we could all maybe breathe a little bit easier, knowing that there's still really hard challenges and hard times that everyone is experiencing, and trying to just process a little bit and get out of the kind of, I need to just survive and keep going because this pandemic and crisis and all sorts of emergency are just weighing us down. We are still in a lot of crises, but I think we're beginning to see a pathway, and we've tried to lay a foundation in City Hall and in city government of, again, getting to making this sustainable and possible for everyone in this work. I think as a mom, this year has been really eye-opening because there's been lots of things that I've just had to remind myself, so much of my kids' life, they're 5 and 8 now, so much of their life has been the pandemic, has been this just disruption constantly, and masks, and you cannot have masks, and what does it mean, and can you really relax, and what do being close to other people mean? It's so, I think we will see for some time the continued impacts of that trauma and grief and isolation. But I hope we've seen a little bit of what's possible too when we trust each other and work together and get connected. We still have a lot more to do to earn that trust, but I'm feeling really reinvigorated about what's possible for the city. And I don't have people. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna jinx. I'm gonna jinx.
Mayor, you can't do that, Jesus. Sorry.
No,
All
I don't
right.
jinx anything headed into 2023.
So 2023, what do you foresee for the city? As far I'm not going to tell you what, Michael, you could probably see it wrote in the private chat. Mayor, what is your forecast for 2023? And I always like to drop things. And so we're going to, for those of you that are listening, hit share real quick because we're about to drop some news that may not be so public yet. And if you like football, believe that you just need to listen in the next couple of minutes. 2023, without touching what I just mentioned, what do you see for our city? And I will tap back into you as mayor first, and then as a mom and as a woman seeing so much going on. As a mayor, what do you see? What do you desire? What do you hope for 2023 for our city?
I hope that a lot of the pieces that we've been talking about can really start to blossom with community. Again, it's been a lot of kind of internal work of getting our house in order, understanding what the needs are, planting some seeds. But this is a year to really make clear, okay, here's the agenda, here's what we're aiming for in terms of getting the resources we need to keep building affordable housing that is actually affordable for residents, or to actually get our schools supported and in the types of new buildings that would actually make people be able to have their full potential ahead of them. There's a lot of these kind of longer initiatives that we've just done the prep work to be able to implement and follow through with. And I'm really excited to see how that continues with community now stepping into the role of analyzing, sharing, and helping with the implementation of it. And I hope that we can, it's Boston is not, I'm not from Boston originally. I grew up in the Midwest where people are a lot nicer to each other on the surface. Boston is not a city where people are necessarily smiling on the T and other places. I hope that we have more joy in the city, just like a relaxed sense of community and love and appreciating where we are. I think we've been in this like hunker down mode for a really long time, and everywhere across the world has, but our city has so much potential to really show how we can do things differently, and the seeds of change have been planted, so we just need them to have space and sunlight to grow.
And watered, one planteth, one watereth, the sun, and God giveth the increase. All right, Mayor, we won't go there. As a mom and as a woman, what do you see for 2023? We had the wonderful appointment of our wonderful Supreme Court Ketanji Brown. What do you and in considering what's going on with right to your body, what do you see as a mom and as a woman?
It's been really scary at moments, just recognizing that to this day, in some of the most powerful institutions in this country, there are people in positions, the majority of the Supreme Court right now, for example, who don't believe that my kids or anyone's kids should have the same rights as even our, their grandparents' generation. I think that will really, the silver lining is that there are places around the country where that react differently. And Mass has been a place where we have been pretty insistent on doing our thing and doing the right thing, regardless of whatever to do. And I do think that's going to make a difference as a woman, or that we protect control over your body.
The mayor is in a very strong cement building, and so the signals messing up a little bit. There we go. Can you do the as a woman? Again, you're good. Listen, I know city that concrete down there, Jesus. As a woman, if you could just recap what you said.
Yeah, just that as a woman, if you can't trust that in certain parts of the country you will be protected or have full control over your body, that makes places like Boston look pretty good. And it's not just from a lens of bodily autonomy, it's being able to thrive alongside the full humanity of yourself, what you care about, the difference you want to make in the world, who you love, how you spend your free time and find joy and recreation in the world. I think that's what we want to represent as a community, is of course taking care of our residents who are here today and making sure that anybody is welcome here, so that we're truly, I keep saying over and over again, the vision is for Boston to be a city for everyone.
It's so interesting how you go back to, I said mom and woman, and you go right back to, being the mayor. Last thing, that we'll talk about. And I thank the team for, we got a little bit of extra time today for your last appearance for this year. The last thing is there is a potential, I heard, that Boston or this area might be entertaining thoughts of having a soccer team or soccer league.
So this is not our sole decision, but
Okay.
we have been in consideration, as I understand. So basically, you know, soccer is the world's sport, right? you, around the globe, right? It's one of the sports where you don't need fancy equipment or expensive, you know, facilities to
AKA low budget.
time. And women's soccer in particular has been just killing it around the world, right? And the U.S. women's soccer team, the best female athletes in the world in terms of their records, their accomplishments, their trophies, and all of that. The
Not their
national
pay,
women's
though. Not their pay. Let's just name that. Not their pay.
Exactly. And so it is about time that they get the recognition, the respect, the resources that they deserve. And the league is looking to add 2 teams to their number of national teams in the US. There's currently 12 teams. So they're going to go to 14. One of the spots is already taken by a team that had shut down, but they had a right to come back if at any point they wanted to come back. And so Utah, I think, is taking that spot. And then there's another spot. And so some folks in Boston have floated the idea of what would it mean for our city to host the only not potential professional women's soccer team.
Women's soccer, not I just presume men. Women's soccer?
Women's soccer. Yep. So, there's a lot of questions, obviously, to get in order before that, but it's been a big priority of mine headed into year 2 to really double down on youth sports. It's one place that we have seen it fall off over the last couple of years and through the pandemic, and it is unacceptable. Some of what our teams have to go through in BPS athletics, they don't have transportation. Anyway, so I want to get everything in order for our youth who are thinking about athletics, thinking about the arts, of just this kind of wraparound experience. And so there's a lot of tie-ins. People have floated a couple different locations. There's a stadium in East Boston, but it's a little bit small, Memorial Stadium, about 4,300 seats. This kind of stadium, you really need 10,000. White Stadium is 10,000 seats. It is BPS's and BPS run. But it houses a number of other uses that we would need to make sure, number one, have a real solid home or can coexist. So there's a potential that if this were to come to Boston, not only would we have the partnership of just amazing athletes for our young people to look up to and interact with and learn from, but that we could help rehab. We've been looking for the $40-50 million to renovate White Stadium that's been underutilized for some period of time. Could this be a good fit? There's a lot more to explore on that front, but it is something that we're talking about.
So can I ask you, are we hearing it first officially here, or have you mentioned it somewhere else? I mean, on a platform.
It's been on different soccer blogs in other parts of the country, but it hasn't really gotten picked up a lot. Again, it's the league has to choose first which city would get the next team. It sounds like we would be in contention alongside a couple other really powerful bids. Some of them have a lot of former athletes involved. I feel like, again, if your goal is to highlight all of the ways in which women lead, kick ass, are powerful, like there's no better place where up and down every level, women are in charge, women are thriving. We always have a lot more work to do, but this would be a really great home. If it's going to go anywhere, this is the city where we should have a professional women's soccer team, I think. And then we need to work out, all the details of where all the pieces would go. But the idea is really exciting.
All right, I said our last thing, but you said arts and gym, and we know they cut the arts. 2 last really quick things. You won't be on again before the Embrace Memorial is revealed. What are your thoughts on the Embrace Memorial that is getting unveiled on January 13th to Amari and the team and whatnot?
Yeah, I can't believe. I mean, I didn't get to go on the delegation where they visited
Oh, I
the
did
studio, and so you've
at the
seen.
Foundry. Yes.
I
Woo!
mean, you can visualize. I've just seen the pictures and the actual place that it will go, but even that is, I mean, I have goosebumps even just imagining the feelings that it brings up inside of the imagery and what that like physical manifestation of love and justice and kind of deciding to take a stake in our future together. And the beautiful thing about how this whole committee and effort was organized is that it's not just about the public art, which is itself very striking, but the educational efforts that are the center that is in Roxbury, the connections, um, the kind of whole community approach to this. It's going to be really powerful.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just address a couple of things and being very real and authentic. One, I wanted to let you all go, and I'm going to bring up her email address right now. There have been a couple of asks of how folks get in touch with you to work with you. And so I'm going to get them Brianna's email address, who I think you would agree would be the best person to get in touch with. So let me, I think I'm able to do this in real time. Copy. There we go. Copy. I'm going to put Brianna's email on here for Jules, as well
Our
as
chief of community engagement.
our chief of community engagement. Shout out. Did you hear that Henry was on?
No, I didn't. He's amazing.
When I tell you, Mayor, that Henry came on and killed it here. But here is Chief Millar's email address. So Julian and also Brenda, you can email Brianna Millar at that email address. The other thing is, Mayor, it was named there. One of the things that just please keep on it. And as much as you talk about housing, just ensuring if it goes to White Stadium that it's also in the hood and residents won't be displaced or treated poorly if it is there. And so just to raise that on your radar, because I don't want you all getting me talk about I avoided this and avoided that.
Yeah, no. There's I think we've gone through a couple of pretty educational experiences as a city over the last several years about sometimes there are things that can seem big and shiny, and then when you get down to the details, there's all sorts of impacts that are much more real for our residents than the kind of glitz of what's being presented.
That's a nice way to frame it, Mayor. That was good. That was good. That was good.
I feel like I pride myself in being able to poke and just lift things up and look inside and say, I want to really understand every single detail.
Yes.
So rest assured that we would never take on any effort that would threaten the stability of our residents, or put it this way, Boston will only do this if we are sure that this will represent a huge step forward in terms of the resources, the programming, the progress, and the partnership that would come to, in this case, the Boston Public Schools and the surrounding community. And so I'm feeling pretty good in terms of the proponents of this bid and their commitment and some of what has been presented in terms of this is the only bid that is an all women led bid as well. And their commitments to, for example, if it were White Stadium or somewhere else, it wasn't even a question whether they would be a partner in making sure that everything could continue as it was, or even in a better spot than before. So we have high expectations here, and we would certainly make sure that everyone is considered and part of how we evaluate this.
Mayor, I want to thank you just in general for being here today. I want to thank you for a lot of what you've implemented over these past, 18 months, a lot building upon your predecessors and a lot that's new and innovative. You've acknowledged that there's a canyon, maybe not just room, but a canyon, for growth with all of us. And my hope for you is in 2023 that you continue to not only prosper as mayor, because I really believe if you do well, we do well as a city. And if we do well as a city, you do well, as a mayor as well. And for your family and the children and your mom and everyone, just happiness, joy, peace. Post if you're going to go ahead and cook or anything. But Mayor, I really appreciate you, and I do appreciate, I think, in these last couple of years, a strengthening of our friendship, and being able to check in and have a different accountability for all these other folks, whatever, saying whatever they say. But I really love and appreciate you, and give my best to Connor and the kids. And I'll go ahead and say it. I'll probably check in closer too, but go ahead and say it publicly. Happy New Year, and thank you for everything that you are fighting to do for our community.
Thank you. You have really changed the media landscape, and it's been just really delightful to see kind of how systems of power are changing and shifting across every sector in our city. So thanks to all of your listeners and community members for being part of that too. I know we have still a lot on our plates headed into 2023, but I'm excited, and I'm so happy to be able to have the chance to do this with, in our city and with the partnerships that we have.
Mayor, thank you. Go ahead and do what it is you need to do. Hopefully I get that, the email I like to get around the holidays that has very few words in it when it talks about a schedule. Hopefully you're doing that over the next few days. Shout out to the team, to Mike, to Jessica, and everybody that makes this happen. Ricardo, I appreciate Phyllis, as we can't forget Phyllis, and everybody else. And Mayor, we'll chat soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Happy New Year.
Same to you. Everyone, that was our mayor, as you know. And she had a little different cadence in a couple of areas today, almost air grabbed and all of that. But it really, I still remain very encouraged and hopeful that we are on this path of change and power systems. And thank you, thank you all for your input and challenges and question and pushback today. It is definitely appreciated because you all do it with the level of hospitality. Oh God, I almost said hostility. What is the word? Hospitality, and respect versus, some people on that other platform that just sit behind the computer and make up fake names and join Twitter 2 weeks ago and only got 2 followers. I've been good all year, and Christmas is over, and I get to have me a day of being petty and getting some things off my chest. However, we won't do that today. That being said, please remember to join us tomorrow. I forgot to ask the mayor about first night. There are a lot of festivities, and Boston Harbor Now is sponsoring an event on, I believe, on the 30th or the 31st. And so they're coming with us tomorrow. Jen is coming, and they are going to tell us about their wonderful event. And so please plan to come in tomorrow at 9 a.m. And I think that is it. Next Tuesday, Coach Meg will be with us from Massachusetts General Hospital. We're going to talk from a theme of a healthier me in 2023. A lot of us set goals first of the year. And if you remember, she came last year and she talked about giving ourselves grace and setting realistic goals and some steps and tools and tricks that will help us stay focused and keep the promises we make to ourselves at the beginning of the year. So that will be next Tuesday. And also, Stan, thank you. How could I forget? I put the post up, but didn't put anything here. Today is the 3rd day of Kwanzaa. And where is my graphic that I just made? Ujima is the theme for today. Collective work and responsibility to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters. So I better not hit miss. Jesus. Oh, I had the graphic cut off on my phone. Collective work and responsibility to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems to solve them together. That is the principle of Ujima on the 3rd day of Kwanzaa today. Stan, thank you so much for that. Happy Kwanzaa to everybody. And I think that is definitely it for me today. We will see you guys tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a great day, everybody.